I knew something was wrong the moment Bethany walked past my desk without so much as a glance. No wave, no nod, just a quick flicker in her eyes, tight and uncomfortable. Then she disappeared down the corridor. Bethany, the CEO's chief assistant, had been with Meridian Biotech longer than anyone else in the Seattle office. She wasn't just plugged in, she was the circuit. Nothing happened in that building without crossing her desk. And in the 5 years I'd worked there, she'd never passed me without saying something. Until today. I leaned back from my screen, my fingers hovering over the trackpad. Around me, the data systems room buzzed with its usual rhythm servers, humming, analysts murmuring in low tones, keyboards tapping in rapid bursts. But something felt off, like I'd missed a key update in a system I thought I understood. I minimized my terminal and checked my calendar. Still empty. Not a surprise, I usually floated between project check-ins and on-the-fly stand-ups. But then I noticed a dashboard notification. A flagged room reservation. Orion Conference Room. 9 a.m. I opened the attendee list. C-level executives, strategy leads, marketing. No data systems, no product engineers, definitely no me. Which was strange, considering I designed and built the entire infrastructure behind GeneScope, our predictive genomics engine. If any strategic discussions involved the platform, I should have been in that room. I toggled over to Slack. 3 new private channels created overnight. All locked, all tagged Orion. The unease deepened. Just then, I heard footsteps. I looked up to see Terrence from Program Oversight holding a tablet and flashing a rehearsed smile. "Hey, Mara. Just a heads-up system-wide freeze window for the next hour." "What kind of tests?" I asked. He paused. "Not sure. Some internal benchmarking, I think. Shouldn't affect your side." I stared at him a second too long, his fingers clenched around the tablet. He glanced toward the hall. "Got it," I replied flatly. Once he was gone, I opened the back-end access logs. There it was. A remote login at 2:43 a.m. into a restricted module, one only I had accessed in months. No reason. No trace of authorization. I froze. Whoever entered used a temporary elevated session. Admin level, auto-generated, single use. Clean. They didn't want to be found. I refreshed Slack. Still locked out. Ran a trace. Every breadcrumb pointed to Bethany. Of course she knew. That look she gave me earlier, it wasn't coldness. It was guilt. Then a ping. Public post. Company announcement. Please avoid interruptions during the 9:00 to 10:30 Orion strategy session. Today's presentation defines our growth trajectory. Attached was a blurry photo. Inside the conference room, the CEO, Bethany, the strategy team. And standing at the front, mid-sentence laser pointer in hand, was a man I'd never seen before. Late 40s. Designer blazer, comfortable confidence. Smiling like he owned the code I'd spent the last 3 years perfecting. He stood there smiling like he owned the place. I zoomed in on the corner of the slide deck projected behind him. GeneScope 2.0. Foundational AI integration. My breath caught. GeneScope was my system. A modular genomic diagnostics engine designed specifically for hospital workflow and risk prediction. That phrase, foundational AI integration, was pulled straight from my roadmap presentation. Word for word. Who the hell was he? "Hey, Mara." I turned. It was Terrence again, standing nervously in the doorway, his badge-clipped crooked hands fidgeting behind his back. "What's going on?" I asked sharper than I meant to. He winced. "I wasn't supposed to say anything, but I figured you'd want to know." The guy leading the meeting. His name's Dr. Nolan Hart. Who? Some AI consultant out of Stanford. The CEO brought him in to advise on the platform. Refresh. Refresh. I blinked. He nodded. "Yeah. They're calling it GeneScope 2.0 now. Big rebrand push. Nolan's been working with strategy behind the scenes NDA stuff, I think." Something in my chest went cold. "Is he using our code? My architecture?" Terrence hesitated. "I think so. His slides have diagrams that look just like yours. Same layout, just new UI wrappers, cleaner fonts, glossy color schemes, and no one told me I honestly thought you were part of it. He winced again, then stepped out quickly. I sat down hard, staring at the screen. Nolan Hart, consultant, strategist. The man presenting my system to an executive team I used to collaborate with without so much as copying me on an email. I glanced back at the live feed, watching him gesture toward one of my neural mapping diagrams, now polished and branded under a new logo. GeneScope 2.0. Somewhere between insult and theft. I wasn't just out of that meeting. I was out of the loop, out of sight, and if I didn't move carefully, I'd be out of the company. The laughter from the conference room floated through the hallway. Glass light polite, oblivious. I turned back to my laptop and opened a secure terminal. If Nolan Hart had really been working on a platform refresh, there had to be evidence. I dove into the documentation hub and found it 3 new directories created in the last 2 weeks, all labeled generically GS2 Roadmap, Diagnostics, Revamp, UXC Update, Access Locked. But I still had super user credentials. For now, I bypassed the barriers and opened the first folder. There they were, PDFs, internal memos, and full redesign decks. Not inspired by my original work. Copied. Every detail from architectural flow to technical phrasing was mine. 6 months ago, the CEO told me it was too ambitious. Now, it was Hart's vision. And he was getting credit for all of it. His insights have been instrumental in positioning Meridian Biotech as a frontrunner in adaptive AI diagnostics. Instrumental. He was repackaging my system like it had landed fully formed into his hands. Then I saw it the project tracker. Launch target Q2. Beta rollout in 3 partner hospitals. Lead Dr. Nolan Hart. System engineer TBD. As if I hadn't architected GeneScope from the ground up over the past 3 years. I sat frozen watching it unfold in real time, every module I'd built now, rebranded, realigned, and handed to someone else without so much as a conversation. Legacy systems, they'd called it. Too complex. Too technical. Too Mara. But now that investors were paying attention, they wanted fast deployment and scalable growth. Suddenly, my system was back in favor, just without me. Applause echoed from the conference room. I wasn't just out of the meeting, I was being written out of the narrative. At 10:41 a.m., a calendar invite appeared. Executive debrief, 11:00 a.m., office 7C. No subject, no explanation, just inevitability. I stood straight in my blazer and walked toward the executive wing. The hallway felt longer than usual. Eyes shifted. Conversations quieted. Inside Office 7C, Ethan, the CEO, stood behind his desk. Melissa from HR was seated, legal folder already open. And Nolan Hart sat casually on the side table like the outcome was already sealed. If stories like this stir something in you, truth, justice, quiet resilience, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. There's more to come, and trust me. The next chapter is one you won't want to miss. Mara Ethan greeted. Thanks for coming. I didn't sit. Let's not waste time. He glanced at Melissa, then back to me. We're transitioning leadership of GeneScope to Dr. Hart, he said. His background aligns with our next phase investor alignment market acceleration. He hasn't written a line of code, I said flatly. He's reviewed the framework, Ethan replied. We need someone who can translate technical vision into broader value. Melissa slid a folder toward me. 3 months severance, full benefits. We'll need your credentials and documentation by end of day. I didn't touch it. So, I'm being replaced today, and you want me to train my replacement on the way out? Ethan smiled faintly. It's about continuity. I laughed. He reviewed my code. That's like reading a novel in Braille with ski gloves. Nolan finally chimed in. I respect what you built, but legacy systems need to evolve. You mean be rebranded under your name, I said. The same system I was told to shelve 6 months ago is now suddenly investor-ready because you walked in with a new font and a buzzword. Jason's tone chilled. We're not here to debate. You've been offered a respectful exit. No anger rose in me. Just clarity. I looked from the folder to Nolan. You're taking the system, but you don't have the keys. Then I turned and walked out. Some exits don't need slamming doors. Just silence and memory. It wasn't just a dismissal. It was a public undoing. A clean, calculated extraction of everything I had built, sterilized, renamed, and handed off to a more marketable face. I'll need time to review this, I said, nodding at the folder but refusing to touch it. With legal, Melissa asked, already knowing the answer. Of course. She kept her tone neutral, too practiced to show discomfort. We'll still need your laptop and badge by end of day. Ethan gave a tight, almost relieved nod. Let's keep this smooth, Mara. No need to complicate things. I looked at Nolan Hart one last time. His face showed that perfected consultant expression blended sympathy and authority. But beneath that, he wasn't sorry. He was settling in. I turned to leave, pausing at the door just long enough to make sure my voice stayed steady. You're taking the system, but you don't have the keys. And by the time you realize it, it'll already be too late. Ethan called after me. Mara, the credentials, all of them. I didn't turn back. Some doors deserve to be slammed. Others, you leave gently, but make sure they remember the sound. This one closed behind me with a soft, final click. The hallway was glass and silence. People looked up from their screens, then looked away, unsure whether to meet my eyes or act like I was already erased. I didn't feel rage. Not the kind that explodes. Just a quiet, sharp pressure in my chest like a blade resting flat beneath my ribs. By the time I reached the systems lab, my decision was already made. I packed slowly. One ceramic mug. A photo of my nephew at Pike Place Market. My sketch pad. Nothing else. Jenna peeked at me from her monitor, then quickly looked away. I placed my company-issued laptop on the desk, as requested, but I didn't touch the personal machine I'd brought with me from day one. That one had never connected to their production network used only for sandbox modeling, offline simulations, and deep structure tests, which made it perfect for what I was about to do. I slipped into the secondary server room, smaller tucked in the corner. My space, where GeneScope had been born. The hum of racks and cold, steady air greeted me like an old friend. I plugged in, opened a secure session, and accessed the core. Not the UI gloss Nolan probably skimmed. The real core, a proprietary inference engine trained by me across 3 years, offline, undocumented, untraceable, and triggered every 24 hours by a biometric hash tied to me alone. Without it, the system would slowly degrade, not fail, just drift, quietly, invisibly, until the hospitals noticed. Until the investors asked why. I let the coldness settle inside me like a second spine. They really thought they could replace me. That the system I built would keep functioning just because they gave it a fresh coat of branding and handed it to a man with a shinier resume and a louder voice. But what they failed to grasp was this. I hadn't just built GeneScope. I was part of it. My instincts, my judgment, my fingerprints embedded in every inference layer and logic thread. Without me, the system could walk, but it couldn't run. And soon, they'd understand exactly what that felt like. The first message arrived at 6:02 a.m. Hey, are you seeing this? GeneScope flagged a stage 4 tumor on a wrist fracture. No history, no markers, just full oncology mode out of nowhere. It was from Raj, one of my former engineers. We hadn't spoken since I was quietly transitioned. 10 minutes later, another ping. Something's off. Diagnostics are out of order. Pediatric scans are going through cardiac logic. I didn't reply. I just watched the alerts multiply. By 7:05 a.m., I was at home sipping coffee at my kitchen counter, casually scrolling through backdoor server logs. They didn't know I still had visibility, but the signs were unmistakable. The modules were staggering. One misclassification here, a 1.2-second inference lag there. Not disastrous, but the kind of cumulative degradation that undermines clinical trust fast. At 7:26, the issues hit the executive tier. My phone rang. Block number. Naturally. I let it ring 3 times. On the 4th, I picked up. Mara, Ethan said. Tense. No small talk. We're seeing inconsistencies with the gene scope rollout. Several hospitals are flagging alert mismatches. I said nothing. We were hoping you could take a look. Just review the inference logic. Isn't that what Dr. Hart is for? I asked, calm. A pause. He's looking into it, but some modules are locked. We're having issues tracing dependencies. Huh? I murmured. It's almost like someone designed protocol-level restrictions that require a master key. Mara, please. This isn't political. Patient outcomes are involved. It's critical. Ah, the urgency pivot. From dismissal to desperation. I'll need a consulting agreement, I said. Triple my former salary. Full access. No heart. No interference. He didn't hesitate. Legal will send it within the hour. I set my coffee down. It had never tasted better. 15 minutes later, I had access. I logged in, ran a full integrity sweep, and watched the audit light up. Blake, or rather Hart, had definitely tampered with it. He tried to override fail-safes without knowing what triggered them. In doing so, he corrupted the diagnostic prioritization tree. The system wasn't broken. It was doing exactly what I'd trained it to do. Resist when mishandled. By 8:42, I'd stabilized the worst. By 9:00, the alerts stopped. At 9:04, another message. System recovered. Thanks. Ethan wants to talk next steps. I didn't answer. I just stared at the performance dashboard. His name was still listed as lead architect, but the system, it had just told a different story. But it was my code that had just saved them. My system that hadn't buckled under sabotage, my architecture that resisted hijacking long enough to force their hand. I didn't need headlines. I didn't need payback. The audit logs told the story. For the first time since this mess began, I allowed myself a small, quiet smile. Because vindication doesn't always show up as applause. Sometimes it's just a soft, blinking green light marking the exact moment your replacement fails and your legacy holds. At 9:17 a.m., Ethan called again. I let it ring. Instead, I watched the system dashboard shift red to yellow, then green, one module at a time, one heartbeat at a time. GeneScope wasn't just functioning again. It was making a statement. At 9:32, a text from Bethany, Ethan's in with legal. Can you talk in 15? I waited 10 minutes, then replied, send me the draft first. At 9:55, the PDF arrived. Consulting agreement, 6-month term, remote only, triple my former salary, full admin access. Not bad. Still, not enough. I opened the doc, made 3 edits, and sent it back. Clause 1, ownership of all diagnostic protocols I personally created, including the core inference engine. Clause 2, no reporting line to Ethan. I answer only to the CTO. Clause 3, minimum 1-year contract. Cannot be terminated without cause. Then I added a 4th, just for me. Public acknowledgement in investor materials. Foundational AI models developed by Mara Ellison. At 10:13, Ethan called again. This time, I picked up. You've got my changes, I said before he spoke. I've seen them, he replied, voice flat. The board is reviewing. No rush, I said casually. But if I were you, I'd move quickly. A few hospitals are already discussing pulling their pilots if the system doesn't stay stable. He was quiet, then admitted, we've had 3 escalation calls already. Clearwater Medical, 2 others out east. I know, I said. They've started asking who built the model. One even asked if Nolan was the original designer. A long exhale. Then, fine. Terms accepted. Legal will finalize. His tone softened. Don't take it personally, Mara. The situation escalated fast. We needed someone fast. I built it, I said. Being close wasn't the issue. The problem was the value you placed on flash over foundation. I didn't mean, but you did. Calm. Clear. You gambled on a narrative. Now you're paying for the truth. Silence. You don't have to believe I'm the right one for the job I added. The system already knows I am. I trained it that way. He didn't argue. At 10:46, the final contract arrived, every clause intact. Senior technical consultant, full IP protections, reporting to the CTO, and in the footnotes, core AI developed by Mara Ellison. I signed. No triumph, No fireworks, just clarity. At 11:02 a.m., I logged back into the system. This time, it opened for me clean, unrestricted, as if it had been waiting. I mounted the system and let it stabilize. Clean, secure access to everything that mattered, no alarms, no blocked routes, just mine again. Over the next 2 hours, I rerouted the core functions, locked down the override protocols Nolan had meddled with, and restored the fallback logic he'd tried to suppress. I didn't delete his changes. Instead, I moved them to an isolated sandbox. Read only. Clearly labeled experimental, uncertified. Let him stumble across it later. Let him wonder how much I'd already seen. By 1:13 p.m., GeneScope was fully operational, stable, reliable, safe again. At 1:42, Bethany messaged me, "Investor meeting just wrapped. Ethan called you lead consultant. Credited the turnaround to your emergency work." I smiled faintly. He could rewrite the press release however he wanted. The logs told the truth. And now? So did the contract. But something else caught my eye. It started as a budget line 3% reallocation, hidden in a routine finance update. I almost ignored it. Funds pulled from diagnostic systems R&D and shifted to innovation lab expansion. No explanation. No approval trail. But I recognized the signature. At Meridian, moves like this never started with confrontation. They started quietly, with renamed folders, delayed meetings, adjusted priorities. By the end of the day, I'd flagged 3 more indicators. A freeze on diagnostic tooling orders, a postponed QA training my team had scheduled, a forwarded internal thread from a project manager that ended with, "Let's hold until Dr. Hart weighs in." Nolan Hart. He'd gone silent after the failure. On assignment, they said. But now he was reappearing, not in code, but in margins, in strategy decks and priority shifts. He couldn't win in implementation. So now he was coming for perception. It began subtly. In meetings, Daniel, the CTO, would glance at me whenever someone mentioned platform transparency or auditable inference. His eyes flickered, hesitant, like someone who knew something but hadn't decided whether to say it. Then 2 days later, Bethany forwarded a board draft. Beyond Legacy, a vision for explainable AI in clinical systems. Nolan's name was on the cover, the content polished, sleek, and dangerous. It painted the current architecture, my architecture, as outdated. A black box. Unverifiable. In need of replacement. Not directly attacking me, but erasing me through implication. By page 19, I felt my pulse climb. Current frameworks lack the transparency to meet next-generation standards. We must rebuild with explainability-first design. I saw what he was doing, reframing progress as obsolescence, turning innovation into liability. It didn't matter that GeneScope was working, that hospitals trusted it again. Nolan was shifting the narrative. And in rooms where people didn't understand code, narratives could be louder than truth. Was Bethany just doing what she had to, or had she quietly taken a side? And the worst question of all, was the board beginning to believe Nolan had a point, that I was the liability? The irony wasn't lost on me. I built GeneScope to detect anomalies, mitigate chaos, and reduce uncertainty. Now the anomaly was me. At 8:13 p.m., I reopened the budget spreadsheet. This time, I didn't skim, I audited. Line by line, week by week, and slowly a pattern emerged. Small reallocations, quiet freezes, paused approvals, all framed as optimization, but collectively pointing to something far more deliberate, a slow starvation of diagnostic systems. It was a chokehold disguised as efficiency. He was betting I wouldn't notice until the damage was done, that by the time I fought back, perception would be against me, that I'd look like a territorial engineer clinging to the past. And if I didn't shift the story, he might be right. I shut the spreadsheet and leaned back, letting the reality settle. This wasn't a misstep I could patch. This was a strategy. Nolan hadn't returned to the company. He was already inside it. I first heard her name from Raj. "You met Liana," yet he asked, leaning in like it was gossip. She just onboarded with risk and audit. From WHO, apparently, wrote the AI compliance standards half this team quotes in meetings. I looked up. No? Why? He shrugged. Word is, she's sharp. And not exactly a heart supporter. That caught my attention. I did my homework. Liana Song, former lead AI compliance officer for the World Health Organization, audited systems in 20 countries, feared, respected, a little mythical. And now, she was in our building. 2 days later, I spotted her of all places in the secondary server room. Not where compliance teams usually wandered. Black slacks, high-neck blazer, silver-streaked braid so sharp it looked engineered. Her eyes moved like they logged everything. I walked over, extended a hand. Mara Ellison. I know, she said, gripping mine firmly. You're the one behind the so-called black box that's outperforming every explainable AI model on the market. I raised an eyebrow. That a compliment? She smiled. That's a challenge. We grabbed coffee in the diagnostics wing neutral ground. I expected rehearsed formality. What I got was something more dangerous curiosity. You've seen Nolan's deck, I asked. She nodded. 3 versions. The one for the board, one for marketing, and the one he showed me. Off the record, I stiffened. He came to you indirectly, asked me to audit GeneScope's early logic pathing. Claimed it was for transparency. Her fingers tapped her mug. I ran comparisons on the flagged misfires during your consulting window. Someone modified the test environment, stripped it down, fed mismatched data. My stomach turned. He fabricated failure. She nodded. It wasn't a malfunction. It was staged. I stared at her. Can you prove it? She met my eyes. Already did. For the first time in weeks, I exhaled. Why tell me I don't like systems used as political weapons? She said. Your model isn't the issue. The fact that it works is. I studied her. So if I wanted to fight back, she tilted her head. Legally, risky. Strategically, simple. How don't defend yourself, she said. Defend the data. That night, we worked side by side in the glass-paneled war room overlooking the server hub. Liana pulled log records. I pulled system overlays. Raj joined us after hours with interface data. Together, we rebuilt the story line by line. Every flag Blake raised, we traced them all to his sandbox. Every inconsistency, a deliberate rerouting. By midnight, we had a complete annotated timeline. Legally defensible. Technically irrefutable. I thought I'd have to survive this alone, I said. You still might, Liana replied. But you won't have to fight it blind. For the first time in weeks, I felt something tighten in my chest. Not fear, but strategy. Hope, sharp-edged and calculated. The plan wasn't to go loud. Not yet. This wasn't about drama. It was about precision. We weren't leaking. We were building blades. The next morning, Liana and I quietly formed a stabilization group. Raj tracked interface logs. Lisa flagged behavioral shifts. Our lead infrastructure engineer mirrored the system into a secure sandbox. No interference, no noise. By day 5, we had everything. 37 performance deviations. 34 traced to Blake's environments. He fed corrupted data into modules designed for clean inference just to create failure. He erased the front-end logs. But Liana found back-end calls buried 3 layers deep key pings under his masked session. Fingerprints in code. Are you sure, I asked? Matched his workstation ID, she confirmed. Same session accessed DevOps notes only he had clearance for. I didn't shake. I didn't flinch. I compiled our findings into a formal audit logs appendices credentials. A silent walkthrough, narrated by Liana. No accusations, just evidence. At 8:47 a.m., I submitted it through a secure compliance channel bypassing JSON. By 9:44, Ava forwarded a board invite. Subject internal security review. No explanation. No one called me. No one acknowledged the file. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling knowing something irreversible had begun. Blake hadn't just been sloppy. He'd staged the entire thing. But now, the evidence spoke louder than politics. No defense. No spin. Only proof. And I was ready for what came next. I didn't need them to say anything. The system spoke for itself now. Our makeshift war room still held whiteboards full of logic trees, coffee cups shoved aside, and monitors scrolling live logs. Raj was tweaking a test loop. Liana annotated the timeline. Lisa flagged clinical regressions. This wasn't defense anymore. It was reckoning. When I stepped into the boardroom, tension greeted me in polished chrome and stiff suits. 12 seats around a glass table. Jason sat at the far end, hands clenched. Blake, absent, unsurprising. I took my seat without a word. Ava passed me water. I didn't touch it. Ms. Ellison. The board chair began. Thank you for joining. You'll have 15 minutes. I'll need 8, I replied. I tapped my tablet. Behind me, a live dashboard lit up. No drama, I said. Just evidence. The errors flagged in the SmartCare update, not systemic. Not due to Neurodetect's core logic. I brought up logs. These failures were manufactured by a consultant who bypassed protocol, rerouted input data, and corrupted testing modules. A few members leaned in. General Counsel narrowed her eyes. Dr. Blake, I said clearly, intentionally, stripped patient tags, misrouted data, then presented the resulting failures to this board as instability. I paused. The logs are time-stamped, authenticated, linked to his session ID across mirrored servers. Click. The next slide showed the first of 34 matched incidents. All occurred in Blake's sandbox, not production. Silence fell. Not surprise calculation. Is the system stable now? The audit chair asked. Yes. Since my return, all core functions have been restored. We're running at 98.7% inference accuracy. And Blake's rebuild proposal based on false data. Risky, clinically, reputationally, and ethically. Jason flinched. Let's be careful with our language, he said. I cut in. Let's not. The board chair folded his hands. Effective immediately, the SmartCare 2.0 rebuild is suspended. Blake's consultant access is revoked pending investigation. Jason said nothing. We'll also restructure diagnostic systems. Ms. Ellison, submit a governance proposal, one led internally. I nodded once, calm on the outside, but something in me shifted not revenge, justice. I gathered my notes. This was never about protecting code, I said. It was about protecting the truth. Then I walked out, not fighting for a seat at the table anymore. I was building a new one. If you've ever been underestimated, replaced, or erased, drop a comment below. I want to hear your story. I stood my ground, not with outrage, but with evidence. If this story resonated with you, show your support in the comments. What would you have done if someone tried to take credit for your work? Let's talk about it. Your words might help someone else speak up too. And here's my advice. Never stop documenting your value. Keep records, own your narrative, and trust the truth. Because when the time comes, facts speak louder than titles. Stand firm. Quiet power endures.